Hey guys, welcome to my class Python for Beginners. And today we're going to talk about the break, continue, and format specifiers for the print statement. Now, to get started, break, the command break or the keyword break is used to break from the while or a for loop that immediately encloses it. Example, the structure of a while statement actually looks something like the structure of a break statement, or what results from a break is actually narrated through this illustration. I'm going to paste it from my PDF. So what happens is, okay, so let's say you have a while loop or a for loop. It can be a for loop as well, and you have a set of statements, and inside an if else or something or some situation you put a break. Now this break will basically exit the while loop, the first while loop. So if you have a sort of a chain while where let's say you had a while loop here, and in the inner while there is a break statement. So it will break from the inner while. This basically break will transfer the program to this line, which is basically the end of the innermost while. Okay, so let's try to illustrate this with an example. So let's open a file. Okay, let's write I equals to 0, and while I is less than 3, you do I is I plus 1. You increment the I first. Now you say print before the break I is equal to, just copy this as is, and I'll tell you what this kind of a print statement means. A format I, and now you hit a break and say print after the break should never print. Okay, and you save this program, and we'll call this break.py. Okay, and now you run this. So what do you expect from this program? See, I is 0 first, and first it checks if I is less than 3. Now 0 is less than 3, so I is incremented. I now becomes 1. So before the break, I is equal to should be 1. I'll tell you how this works, but it should be 1, right? And now you break, so it should never really print this statement and neither this statement more than once. And let's see what happens. This is exactly what we get. Okay, now the continue statement. We come to the continue statement. So the continue statement in Python returns the control to the beginning of the while loop. The continue statement rejects all of the remaining statements in the current iteration of the loop and moves the control back to the top of the loop. Okay, so let's dig in an example for this. Alright, so it's sort of on the same lines. We have I equals to 0, while I less than 3. We do I is I plus 1 before the continue. I is equal to something. I is equal to current value. Understand, this is the sort of current value. Instead of a break, now you put a continue, and now again this thing, and let's see what happens. Before the continue, I is 1, I is 2, and I is 3. So what happened here is, okay, let's change this as well. Okay, so initially I was 0, I less than 3 is satisfied, I is equal to I plus 1, I is now 1. So it prints before the continue I is 1, and it says now continue. So continue transfers the control to the last statement or rather the end of the while loop. So end of the while loop is somewhere here. Okay, and then it goes back into the next iteration, again checks 1 is less than 3, so I is now 2, prints I equals 2, then continue, doesn't print this, goes to this thing. This is the last statement, which is again, understand the last statement is sort of the end of the block, end of the statements of the while block. So I is now 2, 2 is less than 3, I becomes 3, prints 3, continue, again down, now 3 is not less than 3, so it exits the while loop. Okay, now I'm going to tell you what this thing means. Well, so sometimes you actually want to print the values of a variable, or things like that. So one way to do is to like print something like I is equal to, and you say it's I is equal to this and comma I. So it's sort of the same thing. Another way to do is, let's say you want to print I equals to this, and then there's another variable, you say j equals to this, and so instead of having to put gaps here like I is equal to this, so you wrote I is equal to this, and then you sort of append it and do stuff, let's say plus some j equals, let's say there are more than one variables you want to print, so now is I equals to I, and then j equals to, again you write plus j and stuff like that. So instead of that, you can actually club these. So there are two ways of doing it. The first way I'm going to show you here, the second way I'm going to talk in another lecture. So it's actually very simple. So what you do is, let's say you want to print 5 different types of variables for things like that in one particular string. So you start numbering them from 0 onwards in a curly brace fashion. So you say I equals to 0, then blah blah blah, da da da, and then suddenly you say j is equal to 1 because you want to print j, and blah 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 blah, k is equal to 2. Now you end the string and you write format, and in parentheses you write the values you want printed here. So in this case we want the value I, j and k to be printed. I, j and k to be printed. Now let's say we had some kind of a string, so you would just say s is equal to this and then print something like s. So basically the variables corresponding to these arguments. So this is one way of doing it. The other way we're going to be doing is I'll be covering that in another lecture. So okay, and that's pretty much for this lecture. So see you on next time, guys.